Welcome to the architecture of avoidance. Today, we're going to completely master that rather dramatic brain of yours. Let's get right into it. So take a deep breath and settle in for a moment. I really want you to treat this explainer today as a safe space, a place to completely rethink your struggles with getting things done. Let's look at a scene I'm sure you know all too well. Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, the blue light of the monitor is lighting up this totally blank document. There's that blinking cursor just seeming to mock you. You've got this screaming deadline echoing in the back of your mind. And yet somehow, almost like magic, your hand just drifts toward your phone like it has a mind of its own, right? I literally hear this from my clients every single week. They sit down to work and boom, suddenly they're scrolling. I know that feeling of dread, and I want you to know I see you.
Now here's the thing, that automatic reach for your phone, it's not a lack of willpower, not at all. It's actually what we call a tactical escape. This is a subconscious avoidance mechanism initiated by your brain. And its sole purpose? To protect you from the perceived threat of effort. So think of it this way. Your mind is officially kicking off a biological protective response, literally trying to keep you safe from harm. When you're staring at that blank document, your nervous system isn't registering a work task. No, it's registering danger. So your hand grabs the phone to pull you out of the danger zone. It's an escape hatch, built right into our biology. We so often label this laziness, right? And we wear that word like this incredibly heavy cloak of shame. Well, in our practice today, I want to help you take off that heavy cloak. Through cognitive reframing, we're going to see that the truth behind this so-called laziness is actually way more complex and, strangely, much more compassionate than you've ever been led to believe. Listen to me. You are not broken. You are not inherently lazy or flawed. When my clients finally realize that this avoidance is just a misguided attempt by their own mind to keep them safe, the relief in the room is palpable. You're simply experiencing a very normal, very human reaction to overwhelming friction.
See, our expectation is that the brain operates as this flawless, logical powerhouse. We think it should just, execute commands like a computer. But the reality? The brain is honestly more like a highly dramatic, overworked employee. Imagine your amygdala, that's the emotional center of your brain, not as a cold, calculating machine, but as this incredibly theatrical sidekick. When faced with an intimidating project, this dramatic little employee just wants to call in sick and hide under the covers. It literally throws a tantrum. It's a protective mechanism acting out in the most dramatic way possible, completely and utterly convinced that the spreadsheet you need to finish is a matter of life and death. So what does this dramatic employee actually see when you look at your to-do list? Let me tell you, it doesn't just see mundane tasks. It sees the potential for profound failure. It sees the risk of deep embarrassment and a direct confrontation with your own feelings of inadequacy. To your primitive brain, a simple to-do list item looks exactly like a terrifying monster under the bed. It triggers the exact same circuitry that kept our ancestors alive when they were facing actual, literal predators. And when you face a monster, your brain instantly triggers a very real, very primitive freeze or flight response. So you aren't avoiding a spreadsheet. As far as your nervous system is concerned, you are running from a tiger.
And this leads us to a behavior you might intimately recognize. We call it productive procrastination. It's when we do low-stakes tasks to trick ourselves into feeling useful while completely avoiding the one thing that actually matters. Have you ever found yourself researching the entire chronological history of the stapler? Or, suddenly deciding your entire apartment needs a deep clean right when a massive report is due? I actually had a client last week who reorganized her entire spice rack alphabetically just to avoid writing a single email. And I want to validate that experience. It is a really clever but ultimately toxic trick your brain plays to soothe its own anxiety while it's running from the monster. You get that nice little dopamine hit of completing a task without ever actually having to step onto the battlefield. But here's the problem. This triggers a really toxic avoidance loop. First, you feel intensely threatened by a task, so your brain urges you to pivot. You pivot to a low-stakes activity just to feel useful, cleaning, scrolling, organizing. But here is where the pathology deepens, because this avoidance actively grows your shame spiral. You know you aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing, and that guilt just starts compounding. And as that guilt compounds, it significantly increases the anxiety of the original task. Delaying the work doesn't make it go away. It only makes the emotional mountain larger and that physical pang of anxiety in your chest sharper every time you think about it. You've essentially just fed the monster, making it bigger and scarier for tomorrow.
Society often prescribes the completely wrong medicine for this loop. We're handed band-aids like, oh, just have more discipline, or you just need to find your motivation. We're told to just push through it. But as your guide today, I have to tell you, those don't work for bullet wounds.
Discipline is a finite fuel source. And motivation? Well, motivation is a fickle friend that rarely ever shows up when things are hard. They both burn out incredibly quickly when the emotional engine itself is broken. Instead, we really need to treat the actual root cause of this paralysis, the friction of the first step. The initial barrier to entry is what's truly stopping you, not some lack of willpower. The neuroscience behind that friction is actually surprisingly simple. Discomfort equals danger. Every single time you avoid a task and choose the comfortable escape, you are accidentally reinforcing a neural pathway in your brain that equates effort with mortal danger. Your brain is quite literally learning to treat your work like a physical threat, rewarding you with relief every time you run away. To break this deeply ingrained pathway, we cannot use force. You can't just yell at yourself to get better, right? We need a targeted, gentle intervention to slowly rewire how your nervous system responds to the prospect of doing the work. So, here is your treatment plan. We're going to use micro-commitments. Instead of facing the massive, terrifying, perceived threat of studying for 3 hours, your micro-commitment is to read just one single sentence. Literally, that's it. Instead of telling yourself you have to write the whole final paper, commit to only opening the laptop. Do you see how drastically we're lowering the entry price of action here? By making the task almost laughably small, we bypass the brain's alarm system entirely. We are quite literally snaking past that dramatic employee before it can call a strike. When the task is just opening the laptop, the amygdala doesn't register threat, it stays calm. And once the laptop is open, well, the friction of the first step is already behind you. But we also have to address your physical environment. Your phone acts as an emergency exit every single time a sentence gets hard to write. If the work gets even slightly uncomfortable, your hand automatically reaches for that dopamine button. This is environmental friction. So my clinical directive to you is to physically remove the phone to another room before you start. We need to ensure that the mind escape, the act of giving in to distraction, requires significantly more physical effort than just doing the actual work sitting right in front of you. Because if you have to get up, walk all the way down the hall, and retrieve your phone, you're giving your logical brain enough time to step in and stop the dramatic employee from taking over. And this brings us to the core cognitive breakthrough of our session today. We absolutely must actively move away from the harsh self-criticism that says, I am lazy. Instead, we need to deeply embrace self-compassion. I need you to realize that your brain is just a scared protector. I mean, think about how much energy you spend berating yourself. Why can't I just do this? What's wrong with me? Once you shift this perspective and view your mind as misguided but ultimately well-meaning, the internal war finally ends. The emotional weight just lifts right off your shoulders. You stop fighting yourself, and you can actually start healing the avoidance. Doing this frees up that massive amount of energy you previously wasted on guilt, allowing you to use it for actual progress. You see, motivation is a byproduct of action. It's a chemical reward you only get after facing the shadow. We've been taught this entirely backward our whole lives. We wait to feel motivated before we take action. But action doesn't follow motivation, it's the exact opposite. Motivation only arrives after the micro-commitment is made. It shows up after you open the laptop, after you write the terrible first draft of a single sentence. It is the reward your brain gives you for realizing the monster was really just a shadow on the wall all along. So, the crucial question for you at the end of our session today is this. Are you ready to stop the escape? Just take a moment to let that sink in. Feel what it's like to drop the shame for a second. You aren't fighting your own character. You aren't broken. You have the immense agency to head back to your desk right now and gently lead your very protective, very dramatic, and very human mind back home to the task at hand, one tiny, fearless second at a time. I want you to seal this psychological contract right now. Go ahead and type, I am in control in the comments below. And hey, this isn't just for the algorithm. This is a binding clinical contract with yourself to conquer the friction of your very first micro-step today. If this explainer shifted the way you see your own mind, hit subscribe to join our community where we unmask the hidden truths of the human psyche. And don't forget to like this explainer so we can help others turn their mind escapes into mental breakthroughs. Remember, the monster is just a shadow. But tomorrow, when that cursor starts blinking again, which protector will you choose to listen to?